In the quiet foothills of rural Pennsylvania, nestled in the predominantly Muslim town of Evergreen Hollow, lived a young, devoted nurse named Layla Saeed. It was her first year serving at Evergreen General Hospital, but already she had become well known for her calm presence, gentle voice, and unwavering sense of duty. One freezing winter morning, before the sun had even risen, Layla was preparing medications for her early rounds when a radio call came through from a nearby village. The voice on the line was urgent, trembling. "We have a death, and a boy who might not make it either." Without hesitation, Layla grabbed her medical bag and rushed to the hospital's transport vehicle. As the engine warmed under the biting frost, she quietly whispered a dua, her breath misting in the cold air. When she arrived at the scene, the picture was haunting. A middle-aged woman lay lifeless on the dirt floor of a small stone house, her limbs stiff from the cold. Next to her, barely conscious, was a pale young man, only 21, holding a small wooden box filled with crushed herbs. He didn't resist, didn't speak. His eyes were hollow, like he'd already accepted whatever came next. Layla knelt beside him and gently said, "Put that down, okay? Let me help you." He obeyed without a word. His name was Adam Ramani. She stabilized his vitals on site, then had him rushed back to Evergreen General, where he was placed in an isolation room. No electronics, no television, not even curtains, just a small window letting in thin gray light. The village elders didn't wait long. Within 48 hours, they reviewed what little evidence existed and, based on their traditional framework, declared Adam guilty of matricide, the poisoning of his own mother. The punishment, death. But by their custom, he was granted 2 months, a reflection period, a window for repentance, and one final request. Since Layla had found him and was his attending nurse, the elders decided he would stay under her care for those remaining weeks. She didn't protest. Each day she brought him his meals, checked his vitals, waited for lab results, and noted his silence. Adam didn't cry, didn't beg. He simply existed. One afternoon, a local woman ran into the hospital weeping, claiming that rare herbs had been stolen from her home. Layla comforted her and dispatched someone to investigate. Hours later, the report came in. Theft was false. The woman's son had taken the herbs by mistake. It made Layla wonder, what else wasn't true? That evening, while bringing Adam a warm herbal drink, she gently said, "You have 2 months. If there's anything you'd like, by tradition, we're supposed to honor your last wish." Adam looked up, his expression unreadable. "I want to spend my remaining nights," he said quietly, "with a healer, a woman who's never known a man." Layla's breath caught. She stood frozen, unsure how to respond. "That's not a typical request," she said carefully, "and no woman can be forced into that." "Then why not you?" he asked. Calm, director. "You're unmarried. The law says the wish must be fulfilled." Layla returned home that night restless, unable to sleep. "Why not you?" The question echoed again and again. Was this manipulation? Arrogance? Or was it a cry from someone who had never known kindness? The next morning, she said nothing to her supervisors. Instead, she started digging into the case herself. She reviewed the autopsy reports, reread the statements, re-examined the list of herbs, and in the days that followed, she began to talk to Adam, not as a nurse, but as a human being. He never defended himself, but he spoke about his mother, about shame, about dreams and death. "She visits me at night," he said once. "She doesn't say anything, just looks at me, like she's waiting." Rain battered the windows one night as Layla stood outside his room, watching him. His face was pale, his hands still. He looked less like a criminal and more like a boy who had given up on being heard. "Do you remember her well?" she asked. "Every day," he whispered. "But it doesn't matter. I lost the trial before it started." His stillness disturbed her more than any scream would have. Then Layla found something strange in his records. The herbs in Adam's possession? They didn't grow in Evergreen Hollow or the surrounding counties. They were traced back to a controversial herbalist named Barrett Donovan, a man with a reputation for selling unregulated and sometimes dangerous remedies. Layla's instincts flared. Could Adam have been framed? One night, as she brought him warm tea, Adam looked up and said, "I think I've fallen in love with you, not for how you look, but because you see me." Layla didn't respond. Her heart wasn't filled with love or attraction. It was something else. Recognition, the pain of someone unjustly silenced. That night, she walked into his room wearing a simple, modest dress. No lab coat, no stethoscope. She didn't touch him. She just sat beside him. No seduction, no shame. Just silence, trust, and presence. Adam's eyes filled with quiet light. "If you believe me," he said, "help me prove I didn't do it." Layla whispered, "I believe you. And now, I fight for you." The morning after her silent promise to Adam Rahmani, Layla Saeed sat alone in the small records room of Evergreen General Hospital. A cup of untouched coffee cooled beside her, while her eyes scanned faded documents and forensic reports. Adam's voice still echoed in her head. "If you believe me, help me prove I didn't do it." This wasn't about a final wish anymore. It was about truth. It was about whether a system built on assumptions and fear could be challenged by one woman's conviction. Layla couldn't report what she was doing. If she did, the administration would accuse her of emotional compromise, possibly remove her from the case. So she worked quietly, strategically. She began by reanalyzing the toxicology findings. What she discovered shocked her. The herbs found in Adam's mother's system were not native to their region. They were traceable to a rare blend often sold underground by none other than Barrett Donovan, the same herbalist flagged in her earlier search. Officially, he ran a natural healing clinic in a neighboring county. Unofficially, whispers of manipulation, fraud, and toxic remedies clung to his name like rot beneath perfume. Layla called in a favor from an old classmate at a nearby clinic who quietly ran a background search. At the same time, she began asking subtle questions during her home visits to local patients. Many of them grew nervous the moment Barrett's name was mentioned. One elderly woman even crossed herself and whispered, "Don't speak too loud. He has ears everywhere." The more Layla dug, the deeper the rot became. Late one evening, a call came to the nurse's station. A retired midwife wanted to speak, urgently. Layla met her in a quiet office. "I knew Adam's mother," the old woman said. "She wasn't the type to be silent. 2 weeks before her death, she filed a private complaint against Barrett Donovan." "What kind of complaint?" Layla asked. "She caught him distributing untested fertility herbs to teenage girls. She threatened to go public." "Do you have proof?" Layla asked, heart pounding. The midwife sighed. "I warned her, told her he was dangerous, told her he had people who'd do anything to protect his business." And then she added quietly, "I think that's why she died." The line went cold. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. That night, Layla sat beside Adam's bed again. The storm had passed, but the weight in the room remained. "You said your mother visits you in your dreams," she said gently. Adam didn't look up. "She never says anything," he murmured. "Just stares at me, like she's waiting." "For justice?" Layla asked. He clenched the bedsheet slightly. Maybe, or maybe, forgiveness. The next morning, Layla took a deep breath and submitted a formal petition to the Evergreen Village Council requesting a full case review. She laid out irregularities, forensic concerns, untraceable herb sources, and the potential motive linking Barrett Donovan to the crime. The reaction was harsh. "You're defending a convicted killer," said the council chair. "I'm asking for 15 days, Layla replied. "If I can't prove the case is flawed, I'll drop it. But if I can, will you reopen it?" Murmurs rippled through the room. After tense deliberation, the elders agreed. She had 2 weeks. Layla transformed into a woman on a mission. She traveled across towns, spoke to herbalists, gathered botanical data, and visited those who had once slammed doors in her face. Some still lied, but not all. A breakthrough came from an elderly neighbor of Adam's mother. She invited Layla in and whispered, "That night, I saw men outside her house. They weren't strangers. They were Barrett's boys. They broke the door. There was yelling. I was too afraid to speak." "Why now?" Layla asked softly. "Because your courage woke mine," the old woman said. "I don't want to die with this truth trapped inside me." Layla recorded her testimony and matched it with Adam's hospital admission time and the medical records. She even managed to obtain a herb sample from Barrett's clinic by using a patient as a proxy buyer. The toxin matched the herb found in the victim's body. She had the timeline, the motive, the method, and now, the evidence. On the 14th day, Layla entered Adam's room and sat beside him. "I'm not sure how this ends," she said softly. "But I know this. You didn't poison your mother." Adam remained silent for a long moment, then released a deep breath. "I told myself I didn't care anymore," he whispered. "But I lied." That evening, Layla stood in front of the Evergreen Village Council, a file thick with documents in her hand, her white coat replaced with a soft navy scarf that reflected both strength and humility. She presented everything: the rare herbs not native to the area, the toxicology report, the witness testimony from the neighbor, the filed complaint from Adam's mother, the sample from Barrett's clinic. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply spoke the truth. A heavy silence fell over the room. "We'll reconvene in 48 hours, the council head said. Back at the hospital, Adam sat by the small window of his cell-like room, watching the wind stir the trees. Layla stood just outside the glass, her hands tucked in her coat, watching him. This isn't about guilt or innocence anymore, she thought. This is about whether truth deserves a voice. The 48 hours that followed felt like a lifetime. Nurse Layla Sayed had done everything within her reach, gathered physical evidence, unearthed hidden testimonies, traced herbal toxins, and connected the dots between Barrett Donovan, a powerful underground herbalist, and the murder of Fatima Rahmani. But this was Evergreen Hollow, a village where tradition often spoke louder than facts, and a young nurse challenging an elder's verdict was nearly unheard of. Still, she waited, calm but resolute. On the second day, just as promised, the village council convened. This time, the hearing was open to the public. The room was packed. Elders sat in the front. Nurses stood against the walls. Villagers poured in, whispering among themselves. Even those who had once doubted Layla's involvement now leaned in with cautious hope. At the back of the room, Adam Rahmani was led in by two attendants. Dressed in a simple white kurta, he looked cleaner, stronger, his shoulders straighter than they had been in weeks. But his eyes, they held the same quiet sorrow. The council chair, Imam Rahim Dawood, began. Nurse Layla Saeed has submitted new evidence in the case of the late sister Fatima Rahmani. Her son Adam was previously declared guilty. Today, we examine the truth, not to rewrite the past, but to honor justice, even if it arrives late. Layla stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly as she held the evidence. She began with the origin of the herbs, how they were not native to their region, how they were found in Barrett Donovan's blends. She shared the timeline inconsistencies, the signed medical complaints from Fatima against Barrett just 2 weeks before her death. She played the voice recording of the elderly neighbor's testimony. I saw men at her house that night. They forced the door. I was afraid, but I saw. The council members leaned forward in their seats. Then she presented the lab results, the match between the toxin in Fatima's stomach and the herbs Layla had obtained covertly from Barrett's clinic. The final blow came when Auntie Sabrine, the elderly neighbor, stood on her own. No one called her. With a trembling voice, she declared, "They told me I'd lose everything if I spoke, but I saw Barrett's boys enter that house. Adam wasn't even there." The room gasped. Layla turned to Adam. This was his moment, whether to speak or stay silent once more. Slowly, he rose from his seat and walked to the center of the room. For the first time, his voice didn't shake. "I didn't confess," he said. "I stayed silent because I didn't think anyone would believe me. My mother was a strong woman. She raised me to protect her dignity, even if that meant dying misunderstood. I thought silence would end the pain, but..." He looked at Layla. "I was wrong." Another silence. Then Imam Dawood stood, his voice low but clear. "The truth cannot remain buried if the living have the courage to dig. We will annul the prior judgment. Adam Rahmani is exonerated." Gasps, cries, applause, and tears, some angry, some joyful. Barrett Donovan was arrested on the spot. His clinic shut down. A full investigation was launched. The town of Evergreen Hollow, once divided by doubt, began to mend. That evening, as twilight kissed the garden behind the hospital, Layla stood alone. The jasmine flowers were blooming early this year. The breeze was soft. Footsteps approached. Adam stood beside her, hands in his pockets, not saying anything at first. "You didn't owe me anything," he finally said. "I know," she replied quietly, "but someone had to listen." There was a long pause. "I don't know how to live now," he admitted. "I've spent so long preparing to die." "Then we start small," Layla said. "One breath at a time." He glanced at her hand, then quickly looked away. "I still remember my last wish," he said softly. Layla smiled faintly. "So do I. But I want you to know, I didn't come to a prisoner that night. I came to a soul." Weeks passed. Adam began volunteering at the hospital, cleaning, helping with deliveries, keeping to himself. At first, some nurses looked away when he entered, but slowly the stares faded. Layla didn't name what was growing between them. Neither did he. But everyone noticed how he waited outside during her shift change with a cup of tea. How she always brought an extra sandwich. How they didn't smile often, except around each other. One afternoon, Adam was helping move boxes when a little girl asked innocently, "Are you Nurse Layla's husband?" He chuckled. "Not yet." That evening, Layla confronted him playfully. "Not yet?" she asked. He shrugged. "I didn't lie." Under the lantern light outside the hospital entrance, Adam finally said, "I'm not good at this. Starting over. Being normal." "There's no such thing as normal," Layla replied. "Just honest." He took a deep breath. "Then honestly, I want to be with you. No requests, no last wishes. Just this life, if you'll have me." She didn't cry. She just nodded and said, "Only if you promise to believe in yourself the way I believe in you." Their nikah was small, held under a blooming tree behind the masjid. No grand celebration, just quiet joy. Layla wore a soft blush hijab. Adam, a cream-colored sherwani. When the vows were said, it wasn't a celebration. It was healing. They moved into a modest cottage near the hospital. Adam enrolled in ethics and clinical care courses. "I want to help people," he said, "but without needing to be saved first." Layla kept working, but now she also trained new nurses, teaching them to look deeper, not just at symptoms, but at stories. 1 year later, Evergreen Hollow placed a small plaque in the hospital garden. Justice isn't always in books or courtrooms. Sometimes it lives in the quiet courage of a heart that refuses to look away. Below it, in honor of Nurse Layla Saeed and the truth of Adam Rahmani. Some stories end in punishment, some in fairy tale romance. But this one ended in dignity. A boy who had been ready to die, and a woman who dared to see him as more. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video from Zaku Stories, where hidden truths find a voice. Assalamu alaikum.